Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. Okay, so welcome to the next episode of Sausage on a Fork, and I am absolutely delighted to say that I have been joined for this episode by none other than Sara Sugarman, who played Jessica Samuels. Sara, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Oh, Neil, thanks for having me.
No, not a problem. Not a problem at all. I'm absolutely made up that you're able to come on. So what we'll do, Sara, is we'll start this episode the way we start every episode. And if you can just tell us how you got into acting, how did that all start for you?
All right, well, I was from Rill, where
Right.
people from Liverpool like you would go for their holidays,
Yeah.
So I was from Rill, and back in the 70s, it really, we had, as I don't know if you remember because I'm older than you, but there was 3 television channels, and it didn't start till about 4 in the afternoon, and it finished at about 10:30, 11. So it was like a different world. There was no social media or anything, and I was just bored stiff, like living in North Wales, and I always wanted to kind of be on the telly. And in those days it was like, well, you might as well say you want to go to the moon, it just didn't happen. But I was watching a documentary one night about a stage school, and there was all these kids in it that were at the school. You went up for auditions for television and films, and I used to go Saturday morning club at the cinema, and there was this thing called Children's Film Foundation, and those kids were in that too. So after this documentary finished, there was a phone number, and I rang up.
Right.
I rang them up and I asked them, could I come and audition? And then they said I could. So I went to my mum and I said, can I go to London to audition for this stage school? Oh, I don't know about that. Ask your dad. So I asked my dad, I said, can I audition for this stage school in London? He go, I don't know about that. Ask your mum. I said, oh, I asked my mum. She said, yeah. And they kind of, so my dad took me to London. They didn't kind of check it out. They thought one of them had said, yeah. They took me down to, my dad took me into London. I went for this interview. And the next thing is I got into this school, and I couldn't believe it. I'll never forget. I was like 14, and I was standing next to the kid from the road safety advert, and the kid from Bugsy Malone, and like all these kids that to me were like famous. It was like going, like, it was crazy for me. It was just literally like going like to wherever Father Christmas lives, and you meet him and his elves. That's what it was like. And then this bloke came to the school really quickly. I was only been there a couple of weeks, and it was a man from the BBC called Colin Cant, and they were starting this new thing, and they were looking for, or it might have been on, but I didn't know about it, and they were looking for certain characters. So we were all given like scripts to read and go in there. Well, I would have bitten his hand off, and I almost did, and I got recalled for it, and another recall, and then I got the job. I can't tell you, Neil, it was like the most exciting thing that you could ever wish for in your entire life. Like, I couldn't believe it. And in those days, like, what used to happen is that the envelopes would come through your door, your letterbox, and it says BBC Grange Hill. And in those days they thought they'd exploit kids if they paid them. So the BBC used to pay us 10 quid a month for Grange Hill. 10 quid a month. I don't know if anyone else has told you that, but back in my day at the beginning, unless they're only teasing, it was only me that got it. But and everyone else got it. But I remember, like, they sent you a car, and I had enough money for a bag of sweets on the way. I just thought I'd made it. I thought I'd made it. And when you got there, you could have your breakfast. And the first day, I'm not even lying, when I knew it was free, I had 5 bacon rolls. 5! Because they were all free. I couldn't believe it. So that's my first memories of Grange Hill, and I just had the best time. Like, my tutor was Lynn Simonon, who was Paul Simonon from the Clash's stepmom, who'd married his dad, and she was dead cool. And so that was like my only teacher. And it was dead cool, man. I was like dead chuffed. And we'd be at the BBC, and I'd go into Top of the Pops, and Boomtown Rats were playing, and it
Yeah.
was happy days, happy days.
Brilliant, brilliant. So you got the part then of Jessica Samuels, and that was for series 2. So it had been on for the first series, but it was only like 9 episodes, the first series. So, but it was really popular. You know, obviously it became really popular in the second series. Then they said, "Oh, we're going to do 20, 20 episodes or whatever." And the thing about Jessica Samuels is she's really, really memorable, but she's only in 4 episodes. And that,
Is that all she
yeah,
did?
yeah,
Is that right, Neil?
mad, yeah. And
Is that all?
just like there are a few characters like that in Grange Hill who were only in it for a very, very short time, but so memorable because, like, the first time we see Jessica Samuels is obviously she's already part of the school action group, and she's trying to get people to go to a meeting about a school uniform. And the thing that stands out straight away is just how militant Jessica Samuels is. Like,
I know.
I mean, I say that, was she angry? But she just stood for what she believed in, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
And
She did.
she didn't care who she spoke to or how she spoke to them about it. She didn't think the school council was any good, wasn't doing its job, it wasn't worthwhile. And there's a cracking line she comes up with. It's just a sop to make the kids in this place think they've got a say in how it's run. And you just think, yeah. But yeah, and he wants to get rid of it, and she was like, "Oh, we should do a wearing," and all the other kids were like, "Well, we'll get detention for that." But that Jessica didn't care about stuff like that, did she? She stood for, as I say, she stood up for what she believed in, and there's little scenes where like, and it's really Grange Hill, but I'm not sure if it would have happened in real life where they stop Councillor Doyle, who was a school governor, going into a council meeting to let him know that they'd asked every school council rep to vote for the abolition of school uniform. When I was at school, I didn't have a clue who my school governors were. And you just think like, you just sort of think it's so Grange Hill, but would it really have happened in real life? But then she said, right, we're going to stage a demonstration, and they start wearing their blazers inside out. And I have to say, they look quite cool when the blazers were turned inside out. I thought, like, yeah, that looks all right. That you'll get away with that one. At the time, Grange Hill was, did have quite a bit of was getting a bit of a bad name in the press, certainly from parents, because of they were saying, is it going to influence children into how they behave? And Jessica Samuels was a huge part of that. To be honest.
Yeah, because Phil Redmond said that Jessica Samuels was his first brush with trouble about Grange Hill. I was the one who kind of got him into trouble first, so I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, that is an achievement there. I'd be proud of that as well.
But Neil, can I just say,
yeah,
I had no idea it was only in 4 episodes. It's like, when you're a kid and the house feels really big to you and you grow up with it, it's tiny. Well, this thing felt so big to me. I can't believe it was only 4 episodes.
I'm going to be honest with you. I will level with you this. I get, as the people who listen to the podcast know, I get a lot of my information, or nearly all of my information, from IMDb, which I know isn't the most reliable of sources. But there on your IMDb, Jessica Samuels, 4 episodes.
Well, I'll believe it. It just felt so much more. It's amazing, isn't it, Neil, that it stays with you forever.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was 4 episodes. I mean, that's amazing.
So when you are filming such a short amount of episodes, were you on set for the same amount of time as the others?
No, you only get called when you're on set. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was 4. We'll have to ask Phil Redmond. But it certainly, it took a lot of me life up.
Yeah,
it really did. So I find it. I mean, listen, I don't know is the answer, but I'll go with it. I mean, like, it's amazing that was only in 4 episodes. But if they say I was, I'll trust them.
Yeah.
But I was in it a lot. I made lots of good friends. And do you know what's so weird, Neil? It's like a lot of them died, man. I mean, like my little group, because we were kind of a bit older, but they were so lovely. We were meant to be like 4th formers, I think.
Yeah.
And like Tucker and everyone were in 2nd form. So we were older. But a few of those that I was working with, a couple of them like passed away, which is like very cheery. Sorry to cheer
No,
up
it's all
Grange
right.
Hill.
It's
Sorry,
okay.
darling,
All right.
but they live forever on old Grange Hill. It was
Yeah.
a fantastic time, and I was very radical in it. The other thing that happened was that they say, "Who's that boy in a skirt?" Because I
Yeah.
was like such a tomboy, and I was so angry in it. And my dad had a boys' shop in North Wales, so I was always used to dressing as a boy, and I was kind of
Right.
like, in those days, girls really didn't get a look in. You had to play those. Even at school, you had to do like skipping or the balls against the wall juggling thing,
Yeah.
and all the lads got to play football and have a good time. So I was just such a little tomboy, and then so I remember them going, "Who's that girl? Who's that boy in a skirt?"
Because you had like short hair as well, didn't you?
Yeah,
If people didn't know,
yeah.
then they would assume that Jessica was a boy, not you, Jessica. Um,
Oh, very good, Neil. Very good.
Now you just mentioned Tucker there, and there's a scene again which I think this may well have got yourself and Phil into trouble, where Tucker goes to SAG and
Yeah,
says to them that kids who had free school meals shouldn't have to sit on separate tables, which, to be fair, is a very, very valid point. I thought
yeah,
a really valid point. And Jessica says, "No, he's right. Let's do something about it." So she gets up on the tables and then sort of says to everyone else, "If you agree with me, get on the tables as well." So there's all these kids on,
yeah,
and then Jessica starts shouting, "We want the head." That was it. We want
yeah.
the head.
That's it. That's it.
And then Mr. Llewellyn turned up, and everyone gets down straight away. But Jessica doesn't. she, she she waits like to let him know who's in charge here. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
And I just think, like I've already said, she stood for what she believed in, and she wanted him to know that it was down to her, like that's why they were doing it.
I know. It's true. I mean, Phil Redmond's really, really articulate about it. He says Grange Hill is like, it was really realistic, but very aware that you never get to voice anything in school. So it was kind of like wish fulfillment Grange Hill. It was
Yeah,
like realistic, but it gave, through these characters, kids the chance to have a voice when
definitely.
they didn't have any voice,
Yeah,
at
I always
school.
say there's certain characters in Grange Hill who say things to the teachers that kids want to say, like you've
I
just said there,
know.
but
Yeah.
we're always, never were able to do it, because
Never.
in that scene, Jessica does actually deliver a very, it's a typical one, but it's a very articulate speech about children on free school meals and how people
Yeah,
should know if they're on free school meals, and she's right in everything she says
she's
as well
totally
at
right.
the
She's
time.
totally right. I mean, like, Phil was really a clever writer, and I look, as a person, I 100% stand near that. That's where my heart
Yeah.
is. So it was easy for me to kind of be direct, but I have to admit, I didn't know half of what I was saying. I had not a clue. All I was like is, "Look at me, Dad, look at me, Mum and Grandpa, I'm on the telly."
Yeah.
It's more like, because I just left home and I was doing this thing. It was like massive, going to the moon. But I look back at it now. I know that I can stand behind it, and I liked the character.
Yeah.
But like, I look back now, and I'm proud of Jessica Samuels. I wish there was more people like that, and
Yeah.
I know there are loads. And that, unfortunately, it's like, I'm sorry, you're going to hear my politics now, but
That's
it
all
is a
right.
bit Jessica Samuel, so that's all right. But like, every working person, and people like you that were on the dole and they left school, that never came for nothing. That, like, the people in charge who take power, they take power off working people. They wouldn't give it for free. There's always been a fight. There's always been Jessica Samuels on many levels,
Yeah.
and without fight, all these rights get taken back from us. And I'm really proud of that character for that reason, especially in the climate today, where we are now, that the working people have to fight for their rights and stand up and have a voice. And if you can say it politely and be truthful and assert yourself, and people listen, that's always the best.
Yeah.
Failing that, whatever it means to get the result.
No, I mean, like we've said there, the fact that she did all those things, some of the time it worked, some of the time it didn't. Say though, the head
Yeah,
teacher said he agreed with her on that one
yeah,
about the free school meals, but it would still only be done through the school council, you know, so he was sort of giving one hand and taking it away with the other. And someone says to her afterwards, "Oh, it looks like he's got one up on you there," and she says something like, "Well, we'll have to find a way to take it back then, won't we?" And he's like, "My word, what are you going to do now?" And then she tries to sort of stop people joining in school sports till it was abolished, but she went up against Mr. Baxter, and I'm sorry, Sarah. There's only going to be one winner there. I have to say that, like, pick your battles. You know?
Oh, it's so funny, Neil. That's true, man.
Michael Cronin, who played Mr. Baxter, an absolute legend of a man. Not just Grange Hill, just, you know, and everything else he's done. Do you have many memories of working with Michael?
I remember him being frightening in real life. Right. He was like that in real life to us. He was a bit of a teacher in real life. It was a bit scary. But he was brilliant, you know. He came in, and he did have that authority, you know. Mm-hmm. He did, but it was like going next to the scary teacher.
Yeah.
You know, it was funny that with the teachers, that when between action, they were a bit like teachers.
Right.
You know, they didn't come out of character.
No. I mean, if you're a method actor, you don't do it, you know. But
exactly.
Because there's a bit there when he tells them to move off the field, and no one goes, and then he says, "I've got no intention of telling you twice." And everyone sort of looks and goes, "Right, okay," and everyone leaves.
Yeah. Well, we've all had teachers like that, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, you know, pick your battles there.
Yeah.
But then the action group wouldn't give up. They held a picket line to stop people doing sports. They didn't want the lads to go and play cricket, so they use the cricket team have to use a bit of subterfuge and go around a different way of the school so they can get their lift from Mr. Baxter, which they went a different way around the school. And Gary Hargreaves and his mates turned up, and you know, Gary Hargreaves played by Mark Farmer as well, and another one sadly no longer with us.
He was lovely.
He's there again, but then she's so undeterred. There's going to be another demonstration and more people joining this time. And then they were invited, a delegation of them were invited to the head's office to discuss it. And he said they need to make sure it was the majority of the pupils, because they're all, well, it is the majority. Well, no, it's your 50 or 60 people that are behind the Students' Action Group. So then there was a staff pupil committee meeting. It wasn't called a school council for whatever reason. In this episode, it wasn't called a school council meeting. It was called a staff pupil committee meeting. And the vote goes against them. They're going to keep the uniform. So they then organise a sit-in in the secretary's office.
Yeah.
But they got locked in by Mr. Llewellyn and Mr. Garfield, the caretaker, on that one. So Jessica rang the paper to tell them that there was a full-scale riot going on. So when the press got there, Mr. Llewellyn charmed them, sweet-talked them round, and even gave them free tickets to the school play.
It's brilliant, you know, all the plot. Yeah, go on, Daniel.
So they started trashing the office, but then Mr. Llewellyn walked in, stopped them, and the Students' Action Group was banned, and Jessica Samuels was expelled.
You just shows you know, always ask about who's got the power and why they've got it. Mr. Llewellyn.
So, so did you know when you got the part that it was only going to be for that series?
No.
Right.
Absolutely not. They did.
Right.
You know, I was too busy being thrilled to be on telly to know anything else, man. I mean, I was grateful as well, Neil. I was just grateful. I mean, you know, I was literally, it was my first acting job. I'd done I'd got a commercial before and then this. And it was like, it was just so massive that if you'd have given me one cough and a spit, it would have been massive. Do you know what I mean? So like, it's kind of great that it was memorable because she was pretty radical, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She was proper like a little Marxist type.
Yeah.
And I guess I didn't really. My dad owned a shop, so we were quite posh where I came from.
Right.
So, but I didn't realize my own politics then. But now I'm a fully formed human, and I'm just dead proud of Jessica Samuels. I think, look, it's better if you can do it within the realms of not getting expelled, but well, I won't tell you obviously what happens in the feature, but Phil Redmond, when he knew I wanted to direct it, he wanted then to make the central kind of drive of it from Jessica Samuels, because in a way, she was only in which I didn't realize 4 episodes, so it wasn't a major player, but then you can put everyone around that, and that was his approach, and it turns out like it's a really clever idea actually on many levels. Obviously I've read the script, and I know I'll wait for you to ask me questions, but yeah, I'll shut up then.
Okay, all right. So we'll just go back to when you left Grange Hill, and you said that you were really grateful for having that opportunity.
Yeah.
But how did you feel when you sort of found out that you weren't going to be called back?
Too naive, Neil. I was too involved with people on the top of the bus saying, "You're that girl from Grange Hill. You're that." I was just so chuffed, man. I mean, like, I hadn't caught up with any of it. So, in terms of career or wanting more or any, I was just over the moon.
Yeah.
It was beyond I'd never had any of this. So, like, literally kids on the bus going, "We've seen you on the telly, and can I have your autograph? And you're that girl from Grange Hill." It was just beyond my belief. And it still happens to this day. You're that girl that was in Grange Hill. You were in Grange Hill, and it's like, it was just fantastic. Obviously, it would have been great to, have a regular part, but I was chuffed. That's all I can tell you. And Tucker, Todd Cott, he was such a nice lad. And he, I think everyone was so young that they didn't have ego about it. They just did what they were told. I look at it now and it's like, God, that was so well cast.
Yeah.
Everybody is kind of memorable, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's no one in it that is a bad actor.
No.
Apart from me, I'd say. I was overacting.
No, you're doing yourself a disservice there. No, because I'll say that because you continued to act, didn't you, after Grange Hill? And looking there at your CV, Juliet Bravo, but the first thing that really caught my eye after that was Metal Mickey. Being in Metal Mickey for me, that's if it couldn't have been in Grange Hill, being in Metal Mickey would have been tremendous.
They were good shows. I'm sure kids nowadays feel the same about theirs, but for me they were great shows.
Yeah, and there's something that I wanted to talk to you about, because I remember watching this, but I don't think I watched it when it first went out, which was those glory days.
Yeah.
And now I must have watched that when I was more into football. So 1983 wouldn't have been a time I would have watched it, but I loved it just because of the story behind it and the fact that, like, by then, I'm not a Spurs supporter, but I knew Danny Blanchflower was, so I must have been a little bit older. I must have done a bit of history. But also, I don't know if you know this, but there's 3 Grange Hill teachers in those glory days, because Chris Jury's in it. He played a journalist.
Yes. He's lovely, Chris Jury.
Yeah, he's been on this. Absolute legend. He's been on here, yeah. And then Stuart Organ and David Strawn both played.
What did they play?
They were the Tottenham footballers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that's just a nice little link there.
That's lovely.
You did.
That's so lovely. And did you know that Anthony Minghella was the script editor?
Right? Yeah.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Brilliant.
And I did his first play for Today on Telly as well.
Wow.
No, I love doing those glory days. That was a fantastic job.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously it was all, as I said there, it's Spurs, so you obviously got to go in White Hart Lane and look around and all that. Like,
it was amazing, and it was the first feature film on Channel 4 when it started. And it was like, and they were all 14. By that time I was 20, but I actually was a load of weight and kind of act like a 14-year-old. It was fun, man. That was a great job.
Brilliant. And then you did mine there, Faint-Hearted Feminist.
Yeah.
And Taste of Honey, which
I love doing that.
Tony Armour-Tradin's in that, and he was in Grange Hill as well.
Was he a teacher?
Yeah, he was a teacher in Grange Hill, Mr. McCartney. Yeah.
And he's Joan Armatrading's brother, isn't
Yeah,
he? Such a
yeah,
nice lad. He passed away as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Great. He was a legend. He was
Um,
lovely.
and then there was Sid and Nancy,
Yeah.
where you played you played Abbey National. Like, I love that.
I know. That was fun to do as well. I'm sure there was some Grange Hillers in that.
But you know what? There may well be, but I haven't got that down in my notes, so I apologise on that
No,
one.
Neil, you're amazing. You're like, you should go on a Mastermind, and that Grange will be your specialist subject.
My general knowledge would really let me down on Mastermind, I'm afraid. And then slightly, obviously more serious, then was Escape from Sobibor.
Yeah, that was a great job to do,
Yeah,
actually, funny enough.
yeah.
It was just lovely. We shot it in the former Yugoslavia in Belgrade
Uh-huh.
with a lovely bunch of actors, and Jack Gold was a lovely director. He was so lovely. It was a massive, big American thing, and I had no idea even then of like pecking order. And I
Uh-huh.
remember Rutger Hauer's big car, and I just got in it with him and asked for a lift, but he didn't throw me out. He didn't throw me out. It was a fantastic job. I was very lucky. It's brilliant to be an actor, you know. It's
Yeah,
like I miss it. I do miss being spoiled.
yeah,
You just kind of it's just the fun job. But it's hard waiting for your next job
yeah,
and all of that. But I was very blessed because I kind of never had to wait once it kicked in.
yeah.
And it's honestly, it's the best job on earth, it is.
There was one thing because I used to watch this program because obviously, I'm a Grange Hill fan, so obviously children's drama was an interest. But I remember watching this. It was Streetwise.
Oh yeah.
Now you played Angel. If I
Yeah.
remember rightly, you were married to Owen,
Yeah.
and Owen was played by Andy Serkis.
Yeah, lovely Andy
Now,
Serkis.
did you have any idea at that time just what a phenomenon Andy Serkis would become?
I don't think Andy did. No, I mean he was just again such a lovely lad, and I think we did three
Yeah,
series of
yeah,
those, and he was just so lovely. He was nice. He was a look. No idea at all. But like I said, I don't think Andy did. And I look at all the other actors in that. There was like Patterson Joseph, who's a
yeah,
lovely actor. He's a brilliant actor. But Andy just did so well and so clever with it. I mean, you know, he's got his own company. Not only does he play those brilliant characters, he
yeah,
also runs that massive worldwide company, doesn't he? The
yeah.
CGI
Oh yeah, yeah.
animatronic for animals. He'd just be correcting me what I'm saying now, but he's just a legend, and what a
Yeah.
lovely man.
Like, because I always think that when I first saw the fact that Andy Serkis was gonna be a Gollum, I just thought that's that bloke from Streetwise. Like, literally the first thought I had. That's that fella from Streetwise.
That's so brilliant. You're like an absolute expert. You're like an expert in British television
Yeah.
from
Well, I mean
19. Yeah,
that's very kind of you to say so, but as I say, I rely heavily on IMDb. I have to say that.
fine,
Um,
fair enough.
and then so you did Casualty and you did The Bill, but then also
Yeah,
round about that time you started sort of moving away from the acting side,
yeah,
and you started directing and writing
yeah, yeah,
and producing as well.
yeah.
And when you look back, was it Valley Girls was the first
Yeah,
thing you
it was
did?
cool. Well, the very first, what happened to me is I went to film school for a year because I'd always wanted to be part, you know, like when I was a kid, I used to invent little stories
Right.
and all of that. And then I wanted to, like, when I saw it, like in real life, I kind of wanted to find out, always wanted to be on the other side doing more, but I never thought, you know, a kid from Rill, that because these people all go to Oxford University
Yeah.
and all of that. So I never thought I could. But then what happened is I did a little film for Bournemouth Film School,
Right.
and and then I thought I want to come here. I want a bit of this, and so I went to Bournemouth Film School for a year, and I absolutely loved it. And I came out of that film school with a little film called Up the Valley, and then it won the Welsh International Film Festival, which gave me 30 grand, which was enough to make my next film.
Yeah.
So then I made Valley Girls, which was another short film, and we went over to LA to make it, and it was in all of the papers at the time because there was a lady that I'd met up in South Wales, and she was a cleaning lady at the school. And a friend of mine, Molly Parkins, said, "Oh, go check her out. She'd be good in your little film." And her name was Wendy Phillips. So she was brilliant. She was so funny, this woman. So I thought, well, what would happen if Wendy went to Hollywood? What would happen to Wendy? So I did this little film where she wins a holiday on the back of a packet of cereal, and she gets sent to Hollywood. And anyway, I had come across, when I was at RADA, I'd come across Anthony Hopkins because he gave me a bursary to pay fees while I was there. So I said to Wendy, when I get back, I'm going to ask Anthony Hopkins. I'm going away to write this thing, a little short film. I'm going to ask Anthony Hopkins if he'll be in it. She went, all right. And I said, oh, and there's this other part where you meet this kind of Tony Curtis character. She went, all right. Anyway, I go away to write this thing. I actually went to LA, an excuse. It was only 20 pages. I went on holiday to LA. I came back, and I get a phone call at 7 a.m. This is no word of a lie. I get a phone call at 7 a.m. Can you come into Sky Studios for the news this morning? I went, why? And well, haven't you seen the papers? I go to the corner shop. Wendy, the cleaning lady, was on the front of every paper, from the Times to the Sun, saying Mrs. Mop goes to Hollywood holding a mop. And what had happened is the local paper in Wales had seen, like, before I went, I did this little thing for the local paper saying, I'm taking Wendy to Hollywood, we're going to make a little film. And then someone in London had seen that and said, is it true? Got hold of a number. And she went, that's right. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I'm doing a film with Anthony Hopkins and Tony Curtis, because she got it all wrong. And then I'm like, oh my God. So I ring Anthony Hopkins, because I had his number because he gave me the bursary. I said, I'm so sorry. This has come out all over the newspapers. I'm so embarrassed. He went, just go along with it. Go to the news. Say yes. Say I'm in it and do it. So he said to do it. So bless him. And I did. It was like, she was on the 10 o'clock news. Her face, this Wendy Phillips, she was fabulous. She was the cleaning lady up the school, like I said.
Yeah.
And on the 10 o'clock news, her face was in the Big Ben.
Wow.
On the 10 o'clock news. And she was like one of the questions in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And I mean, she was like the Mad Summer Story. They gave her a diary, the Telegraph and the Mail gave her a diary to write a diary when she was out in Hollywood, and she was one of the funniest people you'd ever met, naturally. And so they kept interviewing her, and it just grew and grew and grew, kind of like Susan Boyle or Eddie of the Eagle. It was like mad at the time. And one of these, I will go back to Grange Hill, but they said this American lady said to her from the news, ABC News, what's the difference between being a school cleaner and cleaning the school? Oh, sorry, being a film star and cleaning the school. She said, well, when I clean the school, I have to get up early. I get there, I get down on my knees, I scrub the floors, I have to clean that blackboard, do all the windows, clean the lavvies, and filming's just bloody boring. That's what she was like. Anyway, back to Grange Hill.
Oh, brilliant. No, I love that. And then that film was won a BAFTA, didn't it? The Valley Girls.
Yeah, it was like, it did really, really well. And then all I did was everything I wrote thinking about Wendy. What would happen if Wendy did this? What would happen if Wendy did that? And I'd sit in Wendy's kitchen and listen to her stories of her family. And then that's how I made my first feature film, based on a true story from the village of a real Annie Mary. It was called Very Annie Mary, wasn't it? And and it was the true story of this girl that had won this massive singing prize, and her dad was the baker, but he wouldn't let her go. He was dead strict. And so I kind of just would listen to all the stories and then make them into the shape of feature film. This was the first one, and then I was told to submit it to Sundance, and then it won out of 5,000 entries. I couldn't believe it. So we got to make it, and that was fantastic.
Brilliant. And then because it won something else, it won the best screenplay as well, didn't it? At the
It did.
US
It won
Comedy
best.
Arts.
It did, and that was amazing. That was Oliver Stone gave me that prize. So I had one from
Wow.
Robert Redford
Wow.
in Sundance, and then I went to meet Oliver Stone, and then Judi Dench gave me a prize here, the Orange Prize for Screenwriting. It was like unbelievable, Neil.
Wow.
And it was only my first feature. I was like, what?
So there's a few, I need to ask you this because there's a few films where you've been the writer, the director, and the producer as well.
I'm
Now,
not really a producer. As a
right.
director, you have to hustle sometimes. So, like I'll go and hustle but I'm not really a producer by nature. I
You
mean,
know,
it'd be like asking Jessica Samuels to be calm.
because
Yeah, go on,
it
Kelly.
just seems like a lot of work. That's all I was thinking for it to be a writer, the director, and the producer. It just seemed like an
A lot of work.
an
Well,
awful
do you
lot
know
to
what
do.
it is, Neil? It's like these films are so expensive. I mean, like they're proper expensive. They
Right,
cost like millions.
right, yeah,
So you have to like, you know, it's like you have to really really hustle.
yeah,
And I went to Bournemouth Film School, and if anyone's thinking I would to go to film school and get it, I would honestly suggest Bournemouth's a brilliant place. And they used to kind of train you as a director to like write and produce, because the more empowered you are, it's like having a shop.
yeah.
It's like having a shop. You're the one who's going to get up early with the keys and open the door. And it's like that's what they kind of encourage you to do. It takes optimism and tenacity to get a film through. None of
Right.
them are easy to get through. And so there's times when I've produced, which means basically I've hustled for the money.
Right.
That's what
Okay.
it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you were just taking on three wages. That's all.
No, if it says producer, you can guarantee I haven't been paid.
Right. Okay.
You
Okay.
know.
Um,
Yeah.
and then, so there's been a few more. Like you did Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, and you did
Yeah, that was great.
and Vinyl. And I know Vinyl did quite well in
Oh,
like
I
things
loved.
like sound
Yeah, go on.
best soundtrack and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Like
I love doing vinyl. I mean, I made that for like honestly, like no money whatsoever.
right,
Like literally £40,000, and of my own money that I'd got these shares, and I'd bought Apple shares, and then they went mad, and I got
right,
like all this money. So I just put it into a film, and everyone came and did it, and I think I gave everyone 10 quid a day because that's all I had.
right.
And you can only do that once. But I
Yeah,
absolutely loved doing vinyl, because it was like you don't really, because these things are expensive, you don't get to make them on your own terms. You've always got people with money over your shoulder, and the politics and everyone, it's massive, all of that. But it was just fantastic to kind of do it in my hometown,
yeah,
and it was just nothing but a lovely time with lovely people. Absolutely loved it. And then the opposite of that was Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen for Disney Studios,
right.
which was amazing as well. But that at the time was 23 million. And that was quite back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah,
2004.
yeah,
And just like you just had the world at your feet, man. It was like mental for a girl from Rill to be at Disney Studios. And my dad, I was able to bring him over for his 75th birthday.
wow,
And yeah, it was just one of those wonderful things that happened, Neil. It was wonderful.
yeah. Which do you prefer then, the acting or the directing?
As an experience,
Yeah,
if you ask me what I prefer as an experience, I do love directing,
right,
because you're never for a second never ever for a second bored, not for
right.
1 second. And you don't have to learn so many. If you're an actor in that position where you're never bored, you have to learn so many lines.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could ever learn them. But as a director, I love being that engaged, and then I love character acting. But I kind of if you'd have told me I'd ever give up acting, I wouldn't have believed you when I
Right.
was young. When I was doing great, there's no way
Uh-huh.
I would have ever given up acting. It was what I was put on the earth for. And I do miss it, because I do absolutely love it. And I love the challenge of technically doing stuff, where you kind of transform yourself as well. Although you often get typecast, there's times when you can transform. But it's so immersive that I prefer to use that energy to do directing and writing, to be honest, Neil. I do.
Oh, brilliant. And then, there are more things you've done. You did Hallelujah and The Cracked Paved Roads. And then a bit closer to home, you also did a little bit later on EastEnders.
Well, I'd never done telly. Never done telly, Neil. So I was living in LA, and there's lots of things that, they haven't got an IMDb that I've done. The thing about making films and writing films is if they, there's so many times they get into development, then they collapse or they don't get made, or you write something, but it doesn't get made. So I'd spent a lot of my years writing in LA, in Hollywood, and making my living writing scripts over there. And in a way, it's good because you can never get a bad reputation because they don't get made, but you get paid, and you learn your craft. And then I came back here to live about 3 or 4 years ago, and I'd never done any telly. So I thought, well, the way back in over here is to do the BBC directors course, because it's quite, it's quite a competitive gig that if you can get it. It's like Anthony Miguel, a load of the directors on Grange Hill would have started on BBC director course. So I just thought, I applied, and in the second wave I got down to the last 2, and then they gave it to someone else, and then the second time in I got it, and it was like training up for EastEnders. I was about to do a block, and then COVID happened, so they sat us all down. And then I got a movie for Sky Television, which is Sky Original Movies, which was fabulous. I loved doing it, called Save the Cinema, based in Wales. And then EastEnders came back and said, do you want to come in and do some? So I went and did it. And then, I kind of, I learned so much doing EastEnders, just the technical thing, because when you make a movie, you're kind of much more on an equal footing with your team. It's like you all start at the same time and you finish at the same time, more or less. But on television, on episodic television, you walk in, you do an episode and you leave, and then you come back. So it's more like you're a visitor. So it was another discipline, and I'd never worked with, they've got their way. And if you don't, when you make a feature film, the director says the way it's going to be, and everyone has to lean into that. On episodic television, for the first time, I had to do what they did, and their approach, and I had none of those skills. It was all very about organization, whereas I'm all about emotion and color, and so I had to learn very quickly how to map for 4 cameras in one go. And you get an hour a scene, and so you stand there. I was fine with the blocking of the actors because I'm used to that, but it was the best technical exercise ever, and I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. But I've just been busy developing features and getting ready for Grange Hill.
So that does lead us nicely on to a question that I would normally ask round about this time, as we're coming sort of, a little bit towards the end. So recently, there's been talk of a Grange Hill movie. Phil Redmond's writing it. What do you think of the idea of a Grange Hill movie?
I think it's a brilliant idea. Do you know what happened, Neil? Like you, I saw it in the paper or on the. I was like, oh my God, I wonder if they've got a director. And I rang up Kellen, who's from a company called Madder's Bird. He was in Grange Hill.
Kellen Jones was Mr. Green. He was Mr. Green.
Oh, he's a lovely fella. And I said, have you got a director? And he went, well, no. And I said, please consider me. So I talked and I met Phil, and we got on great. From the man who wrote Jessica Samuels comes the man who likes Jessica Samuels. So we just got on great, and he's such a brilliant man. I absolutely think the world of him. And so we kind of have been talking and getting this right, the screenplay. And it's a different kind of exercise in a way. He's such a clever writer, but he also is used to television that goes on for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And he's got like what, an hour and a half to do this one. So it was a new thing, and he just was brilliant at it. And I'm dead excited because he's Phil Redmond's writing. You kind of don't ever need to mess with it because he's just got such a strong voice. He is Grange Hill. It's like, look how iconic this is. It's amazing, isn't it? That one man kind of, he's just got this atmosphere. He just creates this brilliant world. So it was an honor and really exciting to read his voice and have Grange Hill come back. And it's got loads of the stuff that young people deal with now. So yeah, I'm excited. I think it's a very good idea, Neil.
So when I saw you on the news the other week with Phil Redmond, it was saying Jessica Samuels could well be a focal point of the movie. Is that right? Can you tell us anything at all about that?
I think, let's put it this way. She's figures substantially in it, but Phil says I have to audition like everyone else.
Right, okay.
To play the part of Jessica Samuels. Now, I've got a neighbour who says he'll be gutted if it's not me.
I mean, that's fair enough. Having to actors actors have to audition, don't they?
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Now, every time I do a podcast now, an episode of the podcast, I've started this thing where for the 2 weeks before, the week before the episode goes out, I do a guest the guest competition, and I put picture clues on social media of who it's going to be. And if the first person that guesses who it's going to be gets to ask a question. So the first person that guessed the last episode was Gavin Schumark. And Gavin's question for you is, there's been talk that there will be characters brought back or little cameos or whatever. Obviously, Grange Hill was on telly for 30 years. Will the movie contain pupils and cameos from all eras of Grange Hill, or is it just going to be concentrated into one or two?
I would suggest that it will be from all of them. I mean, obviously, like they'll be representing their time because I can say this: Grange Hill is a community. The world of Grange Hill was always a community, and it remains so. And in the feature film, it's that as well. So you've got people who are you've got kids. This is 4 years ago. They're grandparents now. And their parents now, and so I don't think people will be disappointed.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, because it came out, the talk came out last year, and then we didn't hear anything for ages, and there was all sorts of rumors. Was it happening? Had it been shelved? And then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was all back on the telly, all back on the news and the papers and everything that it was going to happen. So I'm really looking forward to it. And as I said in the last episode, the fact that Phil Redmond is involved, and you've just said it there about is right. It's believable, isn't it? His writing's believable because
100%. I mean, I think it's not kind of like reinvented. It is like genuine Grange Hill. And it's I think he's just such a quality writer. He's brilliant, and it's genuine Grange Hill, and there's a nostalgia obviously for us all, but it also has to stand on its own for young people to be interested, and it has to stand on its own for other countries because you have to sell them abroad who didn't know what Grange Hill was, So it has to work on many levels, and I really honestly believe it does, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. And I'm just so grateful to you, Neil, for doing this podcast and for keeping it alive, because it certainly deserves it. It's almost like it's part of popular culture, and
definitely.
so Yeah, we'll have a good time.
No,
You'll have
yeah.
to come and visit when we're
Yeah, look,
doing it.
anytime if there's an invite for me, I'll be
Neil,
there definitely.
here's the invite. You're welcome.
Thank
So
you.
nearer the time, I'll tell you, and we'll,
Oh yeah,
or you reach out to me if I blooming forget
I
and
would love
forgot
that,
it.
Sarah.
You
I'll
come
be
and
honest.
visit us. All right,
Yeah, I mean,
darling.
if you need an extra,
You're in.
a balding, overweight teacher in the background, I can do that for you.
All right, doing it.
Just need to make a small interjection here, as during the edit of this podcast, I realised that I hadn't asked Sarah when the film was due out. I've since been in touch with her, and she has told me that, in her words, that will be a Phil Redmond / Mad as Birds call as to when the film will be released. In her own words, she is just a humble director.
Okay, so that's the movie. I honestly can't wait. So as I say, just said earlier on, we are coming towards the end. That would be my first question. What do you think of the movie? And then I've got a few more about it. I mean, I don't know how much you watched Grange Hill or whatever when you were a kid, but other than Jessica Samuels, who was your favorite character?
Well, funny enough, I did really like the girl that ran the student action group. But I think, like, who was my favorite? Well, look, I love George, I love Tucker, I love Zamo.
Yeah.
And Terry Sue Pat, what was his character called?
Benny Green.
What a little darling. So all the boys.
Right, fair enough.
All the boys. Being the boy in the skirt.
Yeah. And if you couldn't have played Jessica Samuels, was there another character you would have liked to have played?
Well, it would have had to be Tucker. But it would have been Tuckerette. Wouldn't it? I'd have been Tuckerette. I would have liked that.
Brilliant.
I mean, he was great, wasn't he? He was so great, man. I mean, like, all of them, Zamo. I mean, it's like, you remember them all, don't you?
Yeah.
They were really great. Whoever cast that, because casting is not easy.
No.
It's not. And they're really clever to get it right so often,
Yeah.
They're all memorable, aren't they? But yeah, I guess we're talking, for me, the early days, the early days.
So there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like, as I say, we've said to you, and you've mentioned the fact that it's like, 40 or 45 years ago now since it started, and the fact that people do remember these characters. And again, Phil Redmond's writing,
yeah.
And when you've got Anthony Minghella on board as well,
I know.
People are going to remember, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so then the final question, Sarah, and you've already explored this a little bit with what you said about the movie, but why do you think there is still such affection for Grange Hill?
It's interesting, isn't it? I've asked people this, like, and it's like, because they were living it at school, this is the answers I've got. Because they were living it at school, and because it was so believable, the characters and how it was shot and everything, it as kind of, it's in their bones, as if it was their school. Like, I was talking to someone recently, and she said to me that she was at a party a couple of Christmases ago. And she ran over to a bloke that she was at school with. And she was like, I remember you. I was at school with you. I was at school. And he's looking at her like she's bonkers. And she was like, no, I remember this. And it turned out he was in Grange Hill. But she thought he was at school because she'd come home and watch it. And it was so part of her school that she kind of, her memory got it mixed up,
Yeah.
So, and also because we didn't get that empowered at school to say those things. So, it's like the school, you'd come home from school and watch the school that was like your school, but you got to say things you couldn't say at school, So maybe that's why. But it's thrilling that it touches people. It's like the nearest I've ever been to being in a pop band,
Right, yeah.
And the other thing, Neil, about it is very interesting. It's like, when you make a film, you have to get stars. Yeah. But Grange Hill is the star.
Yeah.
Grange Hill is the star. It's like, it's brilliant. And that's Phil. He made this brand, if you like. You know, he made this whole world, which is the Star. And the people in it aren't as big as Grange Hill.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm pulling that forward with me.
Well,
yeah.
Sara, thank you so much for
It's an absolute pleasure.
Genuinely couldn't believe it when you said, "Yeah, I'm coming on." I was like, "Wow!" I've just found out she's the director of the movie, and I'm going to be talking to her as well. So I'm absolutely thrilled that you've been able to come on and give us your experiences, not only from Grange Hill, from all the other amazing work that you've done as well. It's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, darling. Well, it's absolutely a pleasure to come on and talk with you, and I'm in awe that you take this time and all this research and all this passion you have for Grange Hill.
Thank you.
And I welcome you to come and come and be part of Grange Hill the movie.
I'm there. I'm there.
All right,
no
that's
questions asked. No questions asked. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time and your experiences. And to anyone that's listening, I'll speak to you next time. Cheers. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye, darling.